And we're back on Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. Hi there, I'm David Smith, and Representative Themis Klarides is with us from Woodbridge, Orange, and Derby of the 114th District, and we're pleased to have you here. We've been talking about the budget, strangely enough, or the lack of budget, as the case might be, and where we're going forward from here. A lot of things have happened, though, and one of them that I know you had some concern with, you're concerned about the death penalty bill, and how that transformed, and tell us a little bit about your concerns.
Well, for the past several years at least, there have been bills in the legislature to repeal the death penalty. Yep. As it stands in Connecticut. And of course, since the tragedy in Cheshire a few years back, it has been one of those things that's of the moment. You know, that's one of those subjects that, unless you're in the business, unless you're a lawyer that deals with it, or unless you're in the legislature and you have to deal with it, it's not like a lot of people sit at cocktail parties and talk about the death penalty. But since that tragedy has occurred, it's on the front page of the papers, and we have to sit through trials in the news, on TV, on Twitter, on Facebook, you know, it's everywhere. And so it's become more of an issue. And this year, once again, there was a bill to repeal the death penalty, and it went through the Judiciary Committee and passed, and it was on its way to the House and the Senate, and it never got called. So one more year of reprieve, so to speak, if you believe we should have the death penalty. But what was interesting was, at the last moment, a Democrat senator from the eastern part of the state, who has always opposed the death penalty, decided, I sat down, I spoke with the Pettits from Cheshire who suffered this tragedy, and said, I can't make this man go through any more suffering. It's not time for the death penalty, which was odd, because although I agree with her, where did that come from all of a sudden? You know, because this has been going on for a few years. It's not all of a sudden she realized that there was
tragedy. So what do you think?
I have no idea. I don't know if just maybe she had been thinking about it. I mean, she's a very thoughtful woman. She usually veers on the liberal side, but you know, that's certainly her philosophy, and I respect that. But maybe she'd just been thinking about it and hadn't expressed it before then, and just decided I have to make a decision because push is coming to shove, because this is going to come to a vote, and she was the last vote, so to speak. So then the bill never got called.
And maybe that talking to the Dr. Pettit had that kind of an impact on it.
Because Dr. Pettit and his sister have been very, very visible and very vocal in the legislature since this happened. He comes and he testifies before committees. So. He feels very strongly about it, very strongly.
So that's away for a year. The decriminalization of marijuana.
We actually had
very controversial there.
Two bills that were marijuana bills. So a lot of people got them confused. One was, should doctors be able to prescribe marijuana for therapeutic purposes?
Medical marijuana.
That was one bill. And then there was decriminalizing marijuana, which doesn't mean it becomes legal. It means certain amounts of it are decriminalized. For example, if you're driving down the road and you're driving 10 miles over the speed limit and you get a speeding ticket, you get a ticket that's called, it says right on it, infraction. Those tickets, you can kind of flip them over and say guilty or not guilty, and say it's a $100 fine or $200 fine. If you hit guilty, sign your name, send the check in, and you're done. That's an infraction. But there are certain speeding tickets, if you're going over a certain amount, I don't know if it's 20 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour, they become a little higher of an infraction. That's a misdemeanor. So those, you can't just send it in. You have to appear in court. What the decriminalization of marijuana bill said was, if you possess a half an ounce of marijuana or less, it's an infraction. So it's that, I went 10 miles over the speed limit bill. Okay, now here's my issue. We decide as a state, as policymakers, that marijuana is dangerous enough to be illegal. I mean, it is or it isn't. So we've decided it is. I mean, and the federal government has decided it is, which is another issue. If we decided it should be legal, we really couldn't do that, because it's already illegal
on the
federally.
Fed.
So it's illegal.
Yep.
There's really no question. It is illegal. But what we're saying is, but you know what? It's illegal because it's unhealthy and it's dangerous and all sorts of things. Yet, if you have a half an ounce or less, it's not that bad. If you have a half an ounce or more, bad. That doesn't make any sense to anybody that you discuss it with. And that was my argument.
Well, of course, I guess the other side would say that that's for personal consumption, And it is not that you're going around pushing drugs if you've got less than a half an ounce typically, right?
David, do you know how many marijuana cigarettes is in a half an ounce?
Don't.
I did not either until last year. I've learned more about marijuana in the past year and a half as a legislator than I had in my entire life. Arguably speaking, it's people that have been experts in this field that we had in testimony said it's anywhere from 20 to 40 joints. Would you consider that personal consumption?
Well, fortunately, I don't have to make those decisions. That's above my pay grade.
Depending on who it is. Now, this is not me saying I agree with it, disagree with it, but as a policymaker, most people, I honestly thought, and maybe I'm just naive because I wasn't familiar with it, but when I heard half an ounce, you kind of think of you're in the kitchen and you're putting a half an ounce of parsley. Oregano.
Yes.
Really, that's how I thought of it. That's not that much. But then when we started getting this testimony, we heard how much it was. Most people would say 20 or 30 joints is not just, I want to go home tonight and relax kind of amount of marijuana. So I don't know how we can say, see, here's the problem. It's not intent to sell. You could have an ounce of it, all right, and not have any intent to sell it.
Right.
Would one argue that if you had a half an ounce, which say 30 joints, versus an ounce, which would say 60 joints, you'd have more or less inclination to sell it?
Intent is always a difficult part.
Exactly, and that's part of the problem I have. We should either, this whole, let's draw a line, and it's an arbitrary line, and here's why it is. Because when this bill first started a year and a half ago, it was 1 ounce. The bill was less than 1 ounce.
Okay.
Okay? But then there was so much pushback that the proponents of it said, let's put it down to a half an ounce. Which means it's kind of like, okay, let's pick that number. Is that how we make policy? And is that how we say, all right, it's bad because it's illegal, but it's not so bad if it's that much? Just pick a random number then. Is that how we make, legislation? No, and I don't think you either have the conversation, it should be legal or it should be illegal. You can't say less is okay, it's bad, but it's not as bad. Those aren't the conversations that people want us to have.
Well, it doesn't get much closer than a tie vote, does it?
No.
So have that cast by the Lieutenant Governor was very very interesting indeed. And I'm sure that the paid sick leave bill that got signed into law is something that probably has some concern to you as well.
That was probably one of the most controversial things I have seen that wasn't a social issue, that wasn't abortion, death penalty, gay marriage kind of thing in my career, because this has gone through year after year after year, and it never actually gets to the floor of the House or the Senate. And it's not about, do we believe people should have to work when they're sick? That's not what this is about. It's the fact we haven't had a net job gain in the state of Connecticut in over 20 years. Over 20 years.
And the figures just came out, and we had been next to last in job creation. Now we are 50th, I think.
Well, it depends on what survey it is, but we are in the bottom 5, if not the last, in every one that comes out. And the reason for that is all of the mandates we have on businesses, the fact that we don't bring them in, we push them out. It's just too expensive to live here, and it's too expensive to work here. And by putting more and more mandates on businesses, that doesn't make it any easier for them to operate here. That was our argument with it.
Well, I know that you may well be back for a special session regarding jobs before too long, so don't go too far.
All right. I don't think you have to worry about that.
They will reel you in very quickly.
Exactly.
Again, our congratulations on being elected vice chair of the party. It's high praise indeed for all the work that you've put in for your constituents all these years.
Thank you very much.
And it's always good to catch up with you.
Great to see you.
We thank you very much for stopping by. Representative Themis Klarides with us, and she is, of course, of the 114th District. Always a pleasure to have her with us. Always a pleasure to have you with us, too, on Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. While we've passed along information on getting in touch with her, you can get in touch with us, too, as you would like, with questions, comments, whatever your thoughts might be, because we like to hear from you, too, and understand what it is that you're concerned with. I'm David Smith. We will be back with another edition before you know it, and we'll see you next time.